Welcome to Talking Industrial Automation, a podcast where you get to know the people who make modern industrial automation possible. You will get to hear from CSIA system integrators and industry partners to get a better understanding of how they help their clients solve process challenges and how they've earned success in their careers. Along the way, we will touch on system integration best practices, technology, trends, and challenges. Whether you are a manufacturer, end user, supplier, or system integrator, you will enjoy the insights these industry professionals bring to this podcast. Let's get started. Hi, my name is Lisa Richter, the host of Talking Industrial Automation, a podcast where you get to know the people who make modern industrial automation and processing possible. In today's episode, we're talking industrial automation with Barry Bryan, who is co-owner of DRM LLC, a systems integrator located in southern Middle Tennessee. Barry has over 30 years' experience in the automation and controls field. He and his partner, Jeff Marston, have worked together since 1989, but they formed DRM in 1995 as an industrial contracting firm specializing in panel building and programming. Over the past 25 years, they have grown into a fully featured industrial system integrator. Barry, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, Lisa.
So let's get started at the beginning. How did you choose a career in control system integration?
Well, that's an interesting question. Honestly, it just fell into my lap. Back in high school, back in the 80s, I was the one that you came to if you needed your car stereo wired up, because everybody's car stereo was horrible back then. Honestly, I could just read schematics. It made sense to me. So I like that. I have a brother who's 19 years older than me. And along about that time, he was telling me, he said, Barry, you need to do something that when you get to be 50 years old, you won't look and say, oh no, I've got 15 more years that I have to do this. So, and that made a lot of sense to me, even being 17 years old. I saw commercials on television for ITT Electronics. I thought that was a pretty cool place. Dad asked me to talk to the local electronics instructor at high school, which I did. I had not taken any electronics up to that point. Talked to him. He suggested Nashville Tech. At that time, they had an entry program into Saturn. Saturn was going to be the new automotive company coming into Spring Hill, Tennessee. So we were all excited about that. And I opened up the Nashville Tech catalog, and the first thing was automation robotics technology. And believe me, I was hooked. I thought that just sounded great. And in going to school there, I met a lot of folks who are still out in the industry today, made a lot of good friends, and learned that for some reason or other, I just had a knack with PLCs, and it came out of that. And so been here ever since.
Yeah, so let's talk about what you mean by southern Middle Tennessee, going back to your bio. I was reading that thinking, is there such a thing? Explain that.
Well, Tennessee is such a wide state, but not such a tall state. So it's 600 and something miles across, but only about 120, 130 miles tall. Typically, when you hear people talk about Tennessee, it's either eastern, middle, or western Tennessee. So we're in the middle, just below Nashville. So if you look at a map of Tennessee, you'll see Nashville near the center, and we're directly down from there just above Alabama. So that's southern Middle Tennessee. God's country, you might say.
Well, thanks for explaining that. So back to business. Tell us how you got started in the business of control system integration.
We had, my partner Jeff and I, when we started DRM, or just before, we both worked at a construction company here local in Lawrenceburg. Jeff had a very good customer for that construction company that had a piece of equipment. It was a very important piece of equipment to him, but they had it upgraded. And it was basically that piece of equipment either had to work or they lost a lot of production. An engineering firm come in and reworked that piece of equipment for them. They left it without it completely operating as it should. The money ran out, so they left. Jeff made a deal with him. He said, if you'll let us spot us a little bit of money, we can buy a computer and software. This is back in the middle 80s. I can get it running. And he did. And then he made a lifelong client that day. So we learned something there. And then shortly thereafter, Jeff hired me as he was picking up a few more controls jobs along the way. Because like I said, this was in the 80s. This was kind of new. And so he picked me up, and we've moved on from there. So that's kind of how we got started with that particular project right there.
If you're at a party, well, maybe we don't have parties anymore, but if you're out and about and you're talking to a layperson, how do you explain to them what you do?
We had one of our engineers who one time, Lisa, told us that whenever he got asked that question, he always told everyone that if it's in an industrial plant and it moves, we probably had something to do with it. And that's as good an explanation as I have found in quite some time. Typically with me, I will tell people that we build industrial equipment, and usually if we don't build it, we make it better, faster, or safer if it's something existing in a factory.
So you talked a little bit about how DRM began. Can you expand on that and maybe explain a little bit how the company has evolved since you started?
Sure, absolutely. Now, when we first started, it was back in 1995. My partner Jeff and I were working together. Our person who became our third partner, Woody, he had a business where they built hangar doors for military installations, and he needed control panels built. So Jeff got to working with him building the control panels. And when an opportunity came up, Woody asked us if we wanted to start DRM, so we did. That was back in 95. When we started, there was 5 of us, including our secretary at that time. That was back in June. By July, we were at about 12 folks, and now we are right about 80. We've hired just a few more in the last week, so I think we're right at 80 folks now.
Talk to me about your acronym, DRM. I see the M might be Marston, but
yes. Very
what
good.
about the D and what about the R?
That was a trivia question that we had on our Facebook page not too long ago, as a matter of fact. And you'd be surprised how many people that work here don't know that. And we've had, what's really interesting is all the other acronyms that people have come up with for DRM that have nothing to do with it. It actually stands for the last name of the 3 almost original partners. D was Woody Dillard. I mentioned Woody just a minute ago. M is Jeff Marston. The R, which is actually me, was going to be Tim Rowland. He backed out right before we started. My joke is if we'd have made it DMB, that would have just been dumb. So we couldn't have, there you go. See? So that would have just been funny. So we just left the letters. We thought maybe sometime we would change it. We never did. Here it's been 25 years and it's still DRM. A lot of our customers kind of round it out a little bit, and it's DRM, the way they'll say it. It's kind of like that. So we've heard everything from deoxyribonucleic from the more nerdy folks down to dadgum redneck maniacs. So I have heard all kinds of things. So I'm sure your listeners could probably come up with something even better than that for DRM to actually stand for. But unfortunately, it's just the last name of the first 3 people.
So again, getting back to business, does DRM specialize in any industry, product, or discipline? Why or why not?
Yeah, we do. As a matter of fact, Lisa, over the years, it seems like we've really carved out a niche for us in the glass business and polyurethane business. Both of those things we had here local in Lawrenceburg when we were first starting out. It was automotive glass, so we got used to dealing with gravity sag glass. It's either convex or concave and not nice flat plate glass like you typically see. So we had to evolve our equipment into handling that stuff very quickly. Everything we do is pretty much custom. Hardly ever do we do the same thing twice. So yes, it's usually either glass handling, polyurethane. We do all kinds of machinery builds. We found out we have a special knack for that. Timken Corporation, they had us rebuild over 50 of their bearing making machines in their facility over a large period. We go into some of our clients, they have very large equipment like Banbury mills or mixers or calendar machines or something that's really it's too big to move. We can go in there and upgrade the safety, the controls, anything like that to bring an old machine back to being more modern as well too. And then we have a lot of folks that just come to us that need customized robotic palletizing, dispensing. We do a lot with adhesives and different things like that as well. So you'll see us in automotive. You'll see us in consumer goods. You'll see us in all different kinds of process industries. So we're quite broad. But what we always do, everything we do pretty much is based on a PLC or a controls type atmosphere in some way or other.
I don't know about you, but I am so over 2020. And I am so ready to dig into 2021 and roll out all the new value CSIA has planned for system integrators and vendor partners next year. If you haven't heard, we've completely revamped our content delivery strategy for 2021 to include weekly virtual events that will continue the CSIA tradition of knowledge sharing, community building, and networking, but also capitalize on the opportunities and innovation digital delivery offers. The best part is, this online strategy means anyone from your company, from the newbies to the seasoned pros, will have access to education and content that would normally be out of reach. And don't worry, we still have the other goodies that come with membership, including the highly valued best practices, professional services discounts, benchmarking, training, and a completely revamped marketing toolbox. All this with no dues increase over 2020. To learn more, visit www.controlsys.org/join-2021. Let's do this. So you mentioned a couple of the suppliers that you work with, but who else do you work with?
Well, there's a lot of different companies. There are several tier ones. The ones that I like to mention the most are Union Carbide. That became UCAR. They were one of the ones that first got us started, as well as Coors. They had a facility in Lawrenceburg where they pioneered a new type of cartoning. If you've ever watched Smokey and the Bandit, remember you couldn't bring Coors east of Texarkana there for a while. So we kind of helped with that, as a matter of fact, way back in the day. They spun off a separate packaging company from that. So we helped with that a lot in the beginning. We also had Dura Automotive, which was Excel before that time. And there was a lot of glass that we worked with. So we work with a couple different tobacco companies now. We work with a couple different food companies, some snack companies, metallurgy companies. Like I said, we're quite broad in what we do, but we like to have our expertise actually in automation. Our end customers, our clients, know how their process needs to work or how to build their equipment. But what we do is we bring the automation part to them. So that's where we try to be an expert.
So who are some of your partners? You work with Rockwell. I think you manage KUKA. I think I saw you work with. Are there any others?
Yes, absolutely. We try to align ourselves with a lot of the industry standard companies. So yes, in controls, we're very much Rockwell Automation. We're also working with Siemens and with Mitsubishi some. With robotics, it's Fanuc and KUKA a lot, as well as with Motoman and ABB and other companies like that. Vision Systems, it's Cognex and Keyence, Banner. With visualization companies where we're doing things like HMI systems, SCADA systems, that sort of thing, it would certainly be Rockwell. We're certified in ignition. We've been around Wonderware for all these many years. So we try to align ourselves with a lot of the companies who provide the really high-end automation equipment. We're not the cheapest companies out there. We try to pay our folks well. We have less than a 1% turnover rate, so we keep a lot of the same people around. We've got controls engineers that have been with us for 25 years. That's really nice whenever that someone asks us to come back and do a job that we've worked on a long time ago. So that's kind of one of our strengths. Like I said, we're not necessarily always the least expensive, but we try to be one of the most value-oriented companies with our offering.
So how has DRM grown or changed in the past year, and what do you expect for the company in the next year or two?
Okay. Well, one of the things we've done, and a lot of this come out of our CSIA, our strive to become CSIA certified. Hopefully, by the end of this year, we will be CSIA certified. I have been to several classes for that. So that's something we're striving towards, and it has pointed out a few of the things that we've had to advance on. We do have a EHS safety person now. That's been really good for us over the past few years. We have an HR person. been fantastic. We wouldn't have been able to grow the way we have without HR. Our purchasing and office management have advanced over the last little while. We have ladies in a lot of these fields that I just mentioned, which is fantastic. We love an opportunity to, because usually whenever we go to hire, our typical workers are going to be usually male, young guys just coming out of high school or vocational school. So it's really nice we have opportunities for ladies to come in as well. So we like that. As far as changing, we're adding technologies all the time. We've added simulation to what we do a lot more now than we typically did. We've added a lot more mechanical capabilities over the last few years. Like I said, we always started out being a PLC company, but we're moving more and more mechanical all the time. So in the future, yes, CSIA certified, RIA certified, more into safety, more into areas outside of automotive and where you typically see robotics and PLCs used, because they're becoming less and less expensive and more acceptable into other industries.
What would you say is the smartest decision your company has made recently?
Smart decision, a few different things. One in particular is working with with the area high schools and vocational centers and colleges. That helps us cherry pick a lot of the cream of the crop, young folks, you might say, that would be coming in. What's really nice for us too, we've worked with Lego leagues with robotics and that sort of thing. And it's amazing what these young kids, we've had kids that's in 5th and 6th grade come up to us and ask us about X, Y, and Z and yaw, pitch, and roll and robotics. And you're like, how did you ever hear that? I didn't know about any of that stuff till I was well up in my 20s. This is great. So we try to work with those folks to foster that, to make sure it happens. Over the last few years, we've had up to 500 high school kids come through our facility when we have like a really cool robot project or something. And we'll make sure that each person here has at least a couple minutes to get a robot teach pen in their hand and drive it around to do something like that. So working with those skills, that's been very smart thing, very important thing for us to do. Also, moving to Microsoft Teams. We actually had all that implemented probably 2 to 3 months before all the COVID pandemic hit. So that was really a big deal for us. We kept our essential folks here working in the shop, and then a lot of the rest of us who is in engineering or other things like that was able to move on and work from home. So that has worked really well as well. So that, along with hiring HR and EHS safety, has been some of the smartest things that we've done.
What would you say is unique about how you approach a project?
Very good. Because of our original days with Coors and with Union Carbide, like I talked about Union Carbide, they had a company leave them, and someone that was integrating equipment for them leave. We learned early on that no matter what, we would never walk away from a project. It doesn't matter if we lose money or whatever. Our customer will never know the difference, and we're going to make sure that we provide them a quality solution no matter what. So that's something that's a little bit different. Also, Coors showed us the way that they like to have their control panels laid out. So we build things very much with a maintenance person in mind. So a lot of times our panels are a little bit bigger. They're a little bit differently laid out, so it's easier for maintenance. Our drawings are very straightforward. Our programming is very straightforward. We have a certain way that we've learned over the last few years that we like to program, so that if any one of our guys writes the program, if they happen to be on vacation or tied up on something else, if there's a problem, anyone else can look at it and in just a few minutes understand it, as well as our end customer. We don't do anything black box. Everything we have is wide open to them, so they can jump in there if they need to make extra additions to it or troubleshoot it, whatever they can. So that's kind of the way that we're different. It's more geared towards supplying something that the customer is going to be very happy with for a long time, very robust solution that they'll be able to add to or maintain easily for the whole life cycle of that particular program that they may have.
I'm glad you brought up this idea of maintenance, because when I was at Rockwell Automation Fair last fall, a young man came up to me who worked for an end user and wanted to compliment us on the podcast. But I asked him, what topics would you like us to cover? And he's like, do they ever think about maintenance when they're building these things?
Right.
So the answer is yes. Some people do. So I
Yes,
appreciate
absolutely.
that.
Absolutely. Yes, standards and maintenance. You want to make sure that when these guys look in there, nothing looks really odd to them, that they're comfortable with what you have.
Hi, my name is Barry Anderson and I'm a director at Latzer Learning Services. If there's one thing I've learnt over my 30 plus years of estimating, focusing mainly on industrial electrical and systems integration, managing estimation teams and developing estimation systems and procedures, it's this. A small investment in training can help to avert major losses. That's why it's so important for you to have people on your team who understand the art, science and discipline of estimating projects and delivering proposals. In conjunction with the CSIA and based on my decades of experience, I developed an online self-paced course targeted for systems integrators. Along with providing guides for processes and some templates to help formulate your own practices, the course contains a realistic scenario where you bid to a soda manufacturing company based across multiple locations with both bottling line upgrades and complete greenfield plant installations. Once you have successfully completed the quizzes at the end of each module, you'll walk away with a certificate of accomplishment. You can learn more about this course at www.controlsys.org/win-more. Let me help you to win more by bidding less.
How much of your business, I mean, you mentioned that you've had some clients come back, but how much would you say is repeat your business?
A lot of it is, as a matter of fact, now hardly ever do we get to do the same thing twice, or it's always different. I mean, we've got customers such as in the automotive glass business. They've came back to us over and over again to supply a solution, but one time it might be for sunroofs, the next time it might be for windshields, quarter windows, or backlights, which is your rear glass. It might be always something a little bit different, but I can't think of any customer that we've only done one project for. They typically always have us come back several times. You know, there's always an opportunity when you're working on something like that to find something that can make the project better. And we always strive for that. So we try to make sure that all of our clients' demands are met throughout the project, but also, you know, if we do it this way or if we do it that way, we might can add some value to it for very little cost. And they really appreciate that usually. So they keep having us back. And they like the fact that even if it's several years after we've built this project, that more than likely a lot of the same folks are still there and we understand their systems and know what they're looking for, so we can fall right in there and deliver them a good quality solution quickly.
What would you say the challenges are for your customers? What are they facing now? I mean, COVID, obviously, we're all trying to cope with COVID, but, you know, in addition to that or in lieu of that.
Oh, absolutely. One of the big things we see is having a good skilled maintenance force and workforce. You know, we've been told that in North America, billions of dollars are spent every year moving product from point A to point B inside of a factory without adding any value to that. It's so much better now with either AGVs or with robotics or something like that to move equipment that way and use your people in the factory to where that they can use their minds and their tactile skills and things like that to prove if a product is good or bad or do the things that people really need to be doing and let machines do what they need to. So that's one thing going on. Also, trained maintenance folks. You know, we're getting more and more technical solutions all the time, but we've got to make sure that even though those solutions may be very technically complex, that they're easy to maintain, they're understandable. Sometimes that might be videos instead of a manual. We've toyed with ideas of how can we put little infomercials on our HMI screen so that you can better understand how to start the system up. Also with adding remote means to log into a system. Like we're down here in Tennessee, but a lot of our equipment is in Michigan. So they may call us and say, you know, we've got issues right now. They can't stand to wait until we could fly up or drive up or whatever. So if we can log into that equipment from here, usually within just a few minutes, and it's usually always something simple. It's a button has been pressed when it shouldn't have been, or a switch is slightly out of adjustment. Usually it's something small, and then that way we can take care of it quickly. We see that a lot. We also see purchasing departments not being able to keep up with technology, so they don't know exactly what all to ask for, or sometimes whenever that we deliver a proposal, maybe us and a company who is not quite as technically savvy or cares about things as maintenance-wise or operator-wise quite as much as we do, may look the same on paper, but in actuality is something different. So that's another thing that we see them facing is how do they position us to where that we get the projects that we really need to be on. And maybe sometimes you can use folks that are not with a little bit lower technical solution, but when is a good time to use them and when's a good time to use us?
So without naming names, unless you want to, tell us about a project that was really challenging and yet you came up with a solution.
Oh, very good. We had one a couple years ago. I mentioned polyurethane earlier. Polyurethane is used for a lot of different things. In this particular case, it was used to make seat foams for an automotive manufacturer. This was a first-tier company. They had a system in place for, 10, 12 years that produced these seat foams, and they decided they needed to upgrade a portion of that. They hired a company. A lot of the polyurethane systems come out of Germany. They hired a company out of Germany to supply the polyurethane equipment. We came in to integrate the new polyurethane equipment into the old seat making system. We replaced robots, we replaced controls, all those things. As the project progressed, it was getting near Christmas time, so a lot of plants were shutting down. There wasn't a lot of opportunities to go out and buy replacement equipment or anything, or if anything was broken. So as we got close to time, the supplier for the polyurethane equipment got a little bit behind schedule. Where we should have had 3 weeks to install this equipment, we wound up only having about a week. So we were able to install 3 weeks worth of equipment in 6 days. My guys were not real happy with me for a while, but we got it in. We were all thrilled whenever it went in. It was a very good job. It worked out well. But getting to that point, there was a lot of obstacles we had to cross. One in particular, like I said, a lot of this equipment come out of Germany. They missized the robot end of arm tooling. So one afternoon at 2:00, we found out that the polyurethane dispensing equipment that was on this, it's called a mix head, would not fit on the robot. We brought one of our mechanical engineers in. Like I said, we're down in Lower Alabama. We're about 4 hours away from our shop. I sat down with one of our mechanical engineers. He designed an adapter plate to make it fit. We emailed it back to our shop. An hour later, another one of our mechanical engineers approved it. We asked one of our machinists to stay over. It was his time to go home at 3:00. He stayed till midnight making 2 of these pieces. We had a guy come in at 3 a.m. and he drove it down there. So at 7 a.m. the next morning, we had the correct equipment on site to adapt this together to make it work. So that's something that a lot of potentially other suppliers for this, integrator suppliers, wouldn't be able to do, because we have the electrical as well as the mechanical as well as the installation all together. That's kind of something that makes us unique, as well as able to pull stuff like that off. Don't ever want to take a chance on doing that again, but it worked out for us this time, and we'll take it.
I bet there were a lot of high fives at the end of that job.
Well, after everybody got some sleep, yes, There were high fives a few days later, yes.
I have to ask you, when you put something together from IKEA, are there parts left over?
Yes, there are. Not too many.
That's what I was reminded of when you were talking about this, because every time you try to put something together, there's always a piece you're like, where does this go? Is it?
No. Usually, yeah, we know the important ones and the ones that are not so important. So you can kind of judge it that way.
With so many people working from home, canceling in-person meetings and events, and spending more and more time online, it's more important than ever that your digital presence is top-notch and that you find creative ways to maximize your marketing resources and get in front of your customers. The Industrial Automation Exchange and the Talking Industrial Automation podcast are the perfect places to start. The Exchange offers upgrades, packages, and display opportunities to ensure your brand is top of mind during your customer's complicated, research-based buying journey. The Talking Industrial Automation podcast can also help because now you can place your 60-second spot into the podcast. It's super easy and a unique way to reach new audiences. To learn more about the packages and advertising opportunities or how to become a podcast sponsor, contact me, Lisa Richter, at industrydir@controlsys.org. Let's face it, it's a digital world out there, and you need to make sure your company doesn't get left behind. Let the exchange and podcast go to work for you. Getting back to business.
Yes.
Why did DRM become a member of CSIA?
Oh, okay. As a matter of fact, I don't remember actually why we attended the first conference. I think it was a suggestion to us by one of our peers. Jeff, who is my partner in DRM, and we went to one of I can't remember exactly where it was either, but I remember there's only about 40 or 50 people in the room. So it was a long time ago. It was probably 15, 18 years ago when we went to our first CSIA conference, and we really enjoyed it. We thought it was great that integrators could come together and you didn't act like competitors. I mean, yeah, you kind of held some stuff to yourself, but yet you were able to share and talk about things that were common interests we had, common issues that we had, where we all felt we could be better. And that's the thing that's really great about the CSIA community is being able to come together and share and talk about things where we could all be better as integrators.
So you mentioned earlier that DRM is working toward becoming a CSIA certified system integrator.
Yes.
When somebody asks why they should hire a CSIA certified company, what would you tell them?
Well, one thing that means is if you are CSIA certified, it's almost the same as a plant saying they're ISO certified. It lets them know that you have a set of standards that you adhere to. You are constantly striving to be better. So if they use you on this project and then later on they use you again, you should even be better. And it also means that you're a company who is going to be around. You're not fly by night. You have made a commitment to being an excellent integrator. And that's what we always see. That's something I really enjoy whenever that I talk with other CSIA members, is that they're always striving to be better. And just by communicating with one another, we find things that are common and we realize, hey, we can do this best. So we enjoy that. That works out really good for us and for all the other integrators as well.
Turning towards the industry, what trends and challenges are you seeing in industrial automation right now?
We see robotics reaching out into a lot of companies who have never had robotics before. We were just here recently, we've been contacted by a company that sells boxes and sells potatoes, like sweet potatoes. They realize they need palletizing robots, and it's an odd shaped box that they have to palletize. So they'll switch from Irish potatoes to sweet potatoes to whatever. We've had companies that maybe manufacture odd glass talking to us. We've had people that make windmills to generate electricity talk to us. It's all different kinds of consumers anymore who realize that robotics can help them. And with robotics comes along PLCs and all the other things that we've learned, automation, safety. That's a big thing too. A lot of companies want to be sure that as they move into something new, like it's more automated, that it is safe and that their operators are going to be able to understand it and be able to feel comfortable being around it. So that's a lot of the things that we're starting to see coming in the industry as well.
In your opinion, what's the biggest challenge facing the automation marketplace today and in the future?
Lisa, that would be finding good qualified candidates to both put in automation systems as well as maintain them after they're put into place. We have to go out and we we recruit folks from high schools, from vocational schools, from colleges to bring them in here. But even then, we find out that those folks need to be trained. We're starting our own training programs here. We know that these folks need more than what they're getting in schools to do exactly what we want them to do. So we have to do some training here, as well as being able to go out into the marketplace, like for end user companies. So good, qualified, technically skilled people are hard to find and going to be even harder to find. So that, I think that's the biggest challenge.
What advice would you give a prospective customer who is researching automation controls engineers or system integrators? How would you tell them to go about finding somebody?
Absolutely. Find someone that you trust. Talk to people, talk to different integrators, find out one that really seems to suit your application well. If you're needing welding, you need to be sure the person can weld well. If you're needing something to go along with a furnace or something like that, someone who really understands burner controls or electric heating. Whenever you find that and you get a good confidence level in that integrator, you will know that you found the right people for the job typically. And then you can check out their website, check out extra work. There's no problem asking for references and things like that, so that you'll know that you'll be confident in knowing that they can do the project as you need it done.
What makes DRM optimistic about the future of the automation control system industry?
Honestly, it's all of the new young folks that we have coming into workforce. It's amazing. These guys, they really want to learn. They have a zeal for that. We just have to make sure that we can position them properly within our company. Some folks are just automatically set to go out and work in the panel shop. Some really like programming. Some really like mechanics. Some like running the CNCs and the machines. They usually have an idea of where they want to go, but we found that one of our strengths is finding the right seat on the bus for them to set in. And sometimes it's a little different than they think. And after they grow, they may be here a few years before. But we're very optimistic because of young folks. We're also very optimistic because of all the companies that are, like I said, outside of automotive, that are really wanting to automate. And they understand the value of making things better, safer, cheaper, those kind of things. They also understand how important safety is. We're also seeing that, as far as that's exciting about that, is just all the applications that are out there. Whenever that we've just had a few new hires this week. When they go out in our shop and they see robots out there, or they see that we're working for snack manufacturers, they think, oh, cool, I realize this brand. I've seen this, and I didn't know that this is what went into it, that they use that many potatoes or that much corn, or that this is used that way. There's always something exciting that's making those young folks want to come into these positions and want to grow with us. And so that I just know that there's going to be people, if we can put them in the right place, that's going to work out really well for that application.
Okay, so now I'm going to ask the hardest question of all. Are you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What's the best advice you could give your younger self just getting started?
Oh, my goodness. It would probably be just calm down and trust your gut instincts a little bit more. A lot of times, I think that I would overthink situations, or I would want to jump in there and be first to learn this or that. And a lot of times I'd have probably been a little bit better off if I'd have just slowed myself down just a little bit to make sure that I handle everything properly. I've always enjoyed automation. I've always been so excited about it. I love talking automation. As a matter of fact, I think I even sent you a few pictures of our shop just to show you some of the things that I think are cool out there in our shop. Now, my wife may not think they're cool, and sometimes she gets tired of hearing about all the things that I think are really cool, but I do. And so I'm excited about things like that. And if I could just slow down just a little bit and just take a little bit more of a breath sometime, I think that would be probably one of the best things that I could. And I'd also love to tell myself that you can do anything that you want to do as long as you'll set your mind to it and just follow through with it. Because until you give up, there's always that opportunity that you're going to win. Don't give up and just win.
Well, that's it for today's episode of Talking Industrial Automation. If you are interested in learning more about Barry Bryan or DRM, you can find them on the Industrial Automation Exchange at www.csiaexchange.com. Thanks for listening, and thank you, Barry, for joining me today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Lisa. It was my pleasure to be here and to talk with you.
If you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe in iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also help others find us by leaving a 5-star review and sharing your favorite episodes with colleagues. Thanks for listening to the Talking Industrial Automation podcast. Thanks also to bensound.com and Wistia for the music bumpers. Until next time.